You're listening to The Critical Thought, where we challenge our listeners to use critical thinking when examining the teachings of Jehovah's Witnesses.
I'm Lady Cee.
I'm JT.
And I'm Joy Grant. Joy to be free.
All right. Joy, you want to tell our audience a little bit about yourself?
Well, I was raised in the Jehovah's Witness religion, baptized at age 14, pioneered at age 18, went to Bethel, got married early, 18, went to Bethel at 20, was there during 75 and 76, which I think is momentous years for that organization.
Absolutely.
Armageddon didn't come, so we decided we were going to leave and have a family. So left, served where the need was great in a small congregation, about 20 publishers for about 10 years. But I mentally got stagnated. I went on and became a midwife, a certified nurse midwife. I went to school, which my husband, an elder, got a lot of flack for, but I'm so thankful now that I did. And that maybe have helped crack some of my beliefs. But practiced as a midwife. I retired about 3 years ago, but woke up with the help of my husband back in 1999, 2000. I remember watching the World Trade Towers being crashed into and thinking, this isn't Armageddon, but what's going on in the world? Because we were already mentally out. We were trying to fade. But being in that organization, my husband gave district talks, circuit talks. He was an elder. You know, I was a wife and an elder all my married life. They don't just let you leave that organization if you don't believe it anymore. So they came after us. We decided that we were going to speak up for the silent lambs at the time, for the child abuse issue that was going on in the congregations. You think it's just in your local congregation? It's not. It's worldwide. And that was 15 years ago that we marched against Bethel. And you can see now what's going on around the world, both in Australia, UK, United States, all over the world, dealing with the child abuse issue among Jehovah's Witnesses. So I don't know if I was officially disfellowshipped. No one ever came and told me. The elders, you know, they don't deal with women, you know, in the congregation. They deal with the men, so I was never told. And at this point, I guess sometimes in the old area where I used to live, where I was kicked out, I guess, people do shun me, which is interesting. So there's several issues that I walked away from: the blood issue, the child abuse issue, the shunning issue. Those are the three major ones. But after reading Crisis of Conscience in 2001 and knowing Ray and Cynthia Franz up at Bethel, it just totally blew the house of cards away. That was the foundation that was it. You could tell this organization was built on lies and just what they want people to know. You don't know you're under mind control, especially being raised in it. You don't know you're under mind control until you leave it.
That's true.
So true,
that is so true.
Yeah.
Wait, what's going on today? What's going on? What kind of experiences you got for us today?
Well, I don't know about today, but so I've been away. It was interesting. Friday night, I went with one of my sons to a wine tasting at one of the local liquor stores. Ran into a man who is in that organization. At the time, he wasn't an elder when I was there, but he's an elder now. And I think that's the only reason why he talked to me, because I have run into an elder about 2.5 weeks ago, someone that I delivered 2 of their babies at home. We knew them 40 years ago in that small congregation. And I said his name, hi, so-and-so. And he looked at me, he goes, oh, you're Joy. And that's all he had to say to me. After not seeing me for like 15 years, I thought, really? This is how you treat other people? You know, it's really sad. But anyway, back to the wine tasting incident. I brought up to this man, I said, well, how do you feel about the latest news article where the Watchtower is now being held at $4,000 a day, or being fined at $4,000 a day for not disclosing the documents they have about child abusers in the congregations in the United States? Mm-hmm. And he just kind of shook his head saying, yeah, that is sad. But, you know, do we have to hold our headquarters to such a high standard? And I said, what? Here we accuse the Catholics of being such vile people because they would trade their priest around because of child abuse issues, and you're saying that they're not to be held to that standard? How can an organization that doesn't even defend the smallest in their area, the most vulnerable children, how can you defend a religion that absolutely turns their back on them? And then I mentioned, because I know this year in one of the videotapes that they send out to the congregations, the little kids are telling little kids to save their ice cream money to send to the Watchtower. And I said, can you imagine begging little kids to now pay for their $4,000 a day fine? You know, what type of organization is that?
Right.
So,
Yeah, it's amazing when you see what the organization has become now.
yes.
And people basically, it's almost as if, and when you talk to people now, it's almost as if they had simply just decided, I'll just make the best of it.
Right.
Right. The zeal of saying, no, this is the truth, and it's gone. It's like,
Right.
I'm just going to try to, just ride this thing out. And
I know, well, because they keep dangling that carrot. The carrot is the end is almost near. So they think in their minds they're going to have the justification why they've believed this for so long. Like with my mother, last time I saw her, I just blankly said to her, there is no Armageddon coming and you are stuck in a cult. Her response to me, because she has been in that religion since her 20s, she is now 90, is, what can I do differently? And it's like, yeah, I don't want to blow your bubble that you wasted your life. And she holds on to that dangling carrot of a paradise. But she won't, so she now practices shunning against me. She won't acknowledge that maybe she was stuck in a cult or stuck in a mind control group. And I hate using that term cult. I think someone recently said we should call it spiritual abuse. And it is.
that's what it is.
It's strictly spiritual abuse, because that's not so offensive. If I was a witness, I would absolutely shut my mind off. If you called me being in a cult, there's no way I was in a cult. So
True.
That's why I personally often refer to it as a high control group.
correct.
Because generally speaking, people have in their mind what a cult is. And they're thinking of the guy with the beard and the Rolls Royces, and he's living up in the mountains and got, people up there on some
Right.
compound. And so when you're talking to people who work with Jehovah's Witnesses, who go to school with Jehovah's Witnesses, have Jehovah's Witnesses as their neighbors, they're like, they're just some nice people over there. So what are you talking about?
True.
And that's because there are two things that most people don't know about witnesses, and that is their teachings and their culture. And those two things are very important to understand about the witnesses. It was interesting you mentioned about the $4,000. We've had this conversation with other people, and it's pretty much the lawyers at Bethel. They just simply made a decision. Look, we'll just ride this thing out. And when you think about how much money the society makes, I was just before we did this video, I was just looking at an article that was published years ago in the New York Newsday. And it had the Watchtower listed as the 34th largest corporation in New York City. And it was listed among Cantor Fitzgerald and Citibank and all the major accounting firms. And their revenues was almost $1 billion a year. And when you look at that list and you look at all these companies that the society is plugged right there in between, there's a couple of major differences. They don't pay taxes, and they have no salaries. They have no pension plan. So whereas all these other companies that made the New York City's top corporations, they have a lot they have to pay out. Watchtower has very little. And when you consider the society's been living like this and operating like this for decades, and so they're literally sitting on a pile of cash. And so when you figure $4,000 a day, you got 8 million members, that's 20 cents a day, and so they just laugh at that.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of reminds you of what happened in the United States with the cigarette companies. The cigarette companies have fought, being sued for cancer for years. And when they reached the point where they realized they was about to lose some major cases, they just threw up their hands and said, we'll just pay this big fine and call it a day. And I mean, it was in the tens of millions of dollars that the cigarette companies just paid. And in business, they call it the price of doing business. And so the Watchtower is a business. It's a publishing company. They just convinced 8 million people to move their products for free. And that's basically what we did. We moved their products for free. It's a business, and they operated as such. And
Mhm.
people often, wonder, what is the society's financial standing? And there's something to pause at, but you also have to keep in mind that one of the things society is very good at, and that is getting their people excited and getting them to do things. And so the society, by announcing that, we're going broke, well, of course, what does that do to the typical Jehovah's Witness? I told someone the other day, you need to keep in mind, that's why we did a video on the society, on about the deficit at the Circuit Assembly. The society has for decades realized the minute that brother walks out there and announces, friends, we got a deficit, the friends are going to pour money in. And so to think that they wouldn't do the same thing on a much higher level from the corporate office, why wouldn't they? Why would they not have a governing body come out and cry broke? Because what reaction do they know they will get from their members? The money will pour in. And besides, it's nothing new. There was a well-known pastor who indicated to his members that God wanted him to have a G5 jet, brand new jet. He wanted a new jet. There was one pastor who said, if you don't give me my money, God's going to call me back to heaven. So, they understand their members. And if they tell their members certain things, they will get a reaction. So the reaction that they would receive worldwide by crying broke, my goodness, it just fills the coffins. And think about it. I was just reading something the other day, about, the property they've sold. They have it on their website now. And one of the things they didn't mention on the website, they didn't tell you how much they picked up in selling these properties, the Towers building and 107. They didn't mention how much they picked up. Society's made over $1 billion in selling real estate. And basically, as a church, they're not going to be taxed like other corporations that would have to sell their property. So I tell people, and we laugh about this all the time, until you see the society's financial statement, you don't know what they got. And when you consider they've been running this thing for about 140 years, please.
But what you also got to think about is like when you talk about the salaries that they don't have to pay and how that little bit of money they gave to the Bethelites. And I think about it like when you have a hospital, they pay out, settlements all the time for malpractice, but they're not going broke, and they have huge salaries to pay, So when you look at it from that angle, and the Watchtower is nonprofit, they don't pay taxes, so they got plenty of money. They probably got money to burn.
Yeah, I've talked to a number of people. The society's a business. It's just as simple. And like with any business, they work with different consultants. And I've talked to people who, they've indicated basically the society's had consultants come in and look at their business model. And you can see a couple of things that's very interesting. One of the things is they release over 1,000 Bethelites at one time. They made the announcement, go home, go get a job. And it basically revolved around the fact that, from what I understand, when the consultant looked at it, they're like, well, you have half the people here supporting the other half. Now, you have laundry service, cooking service. Most folks don't have laundry service. Most folks don't have somebody cook their meals 3 times a day. Let your staff cook their own meal. Let them wash their own clothes. You can get rid of half your people up here. And that's what we see happen. I was talking to someone, and at Bethel, since you mentioned you were at Bethel, in certain departments, you're kind of like sworn to secrets. Whatever projects you're working on, you can't discuss it. I know, like with myself, when the new releases would come out, you couldn't even tell your roommate what the new releases were. In fact, if you did, you could actually end up getting kicked out of Bethel. Mm-hmm. So I was talking to someone, they was talking about the people who worked in engineering, in drafting, and what they saw when they saw the first time of what the proposal was for Warwick. And as someone mentioned, it didn't take a rocket scientist to look at those blueprints and see we have less rooms up at Warwick than we have in Brooklyn. So, yeah. So it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure we got less rooms. Somebody's not going up to Warwick with us. But of course, you couldn't, if you worked in drafting and you worked in engineering, you couldn't walk around saying, well, y'all know we got about half the rooms that we got down here in Brooklyn, so somebody's not going to make it. Of course, you couldn't tell nobody.
Right.
So there were people who knew even before it was announced that a lot of Bethelites weren't going to make that trip up to Warwick. I know a couple of guys, a guy we've been friends for years. He worked in the press room up at the farm. In fact, his wife married a friend of Lady Cee's, and he has like 30-some years at Bethel. Gone. Take a hike. We see what they did with the district overseers. Oh my goodness, that was just so cruel. Oh my goodness.
No loyalty on their part.
Oh my goodness.
Right,
And you
right.
figure the average district overseer has been in the traveling work as a circuit overseer for years, and he's in the district work. And so you're talking about probably somewhere roughly around 60, 70 years of age. They told those guys, you turn those car keys in and get out of the apartment, get you a place in 30 days.
Right, with no job skills.
Yeah, no
Yeah.
job skills. And so you're talking about a person who's leaving Bethel with 30 years, 25 years, circling, the district, people in the district level. I had spoke to someone, and they say that when they made the original announcement, they let the district overseers know, you guys, we're getting rid of this level of management. We don't need this entire level, is gone. They said a number of district overseers called the service department asking, look, put me back in the circuit work, put me back to the circuit, put me back on the circuit level. And the society's basic position was like, nah, we're not doing that. Because
they got older.
Yeah,
they were trying to retire.
they was trying to get rid of it. And because with a lot of the changes, you got to remember too, like I was telling someone, you got to remember with a lot of the changes they're making, these guys, they remember when stuff wasn't like this. And so they have a great reference points like, why the society is doing this? And so in management, when management changes hands in regular corporation, they get rid of many people who oftentimes know how the company was run. They get rid of bringing young guys and start over again. And that's basically what they're doing. I mean, it's absolutely amazing.
Well, Joy, how about you? Have you ran into anybody that was at Bethel with you, or anybody that you knew that were in the organization and has left now?
No, I keep hoping that some of my old friends or some of the old people would wake up and realize what's going on. And it's sad, but it's not. But, we could talk about all these little details, business-wise, what the Watchtower is doing. One point that really hit my mind, especially this month when Gary Breaux gave the talk defending the two witness rule or policy they have, what they're not saying is they are ignoring a crime. Child abuse is a crime that they are not reporting. So they're elevating their policies, whether it's the blood issue, whether it's the child abuse, whether it's the shunning, is more important than the basic human civilization to say, because criminal laws are what civilization keeps us civil. We deal with people who are criminals. We don't let them just freely go about their business. And unfortunately, that Watchtower business organization is freely going about their business. So hopefully someday someone will pick up on what all the different things that this Watchtower organization is doing. There was an article recently, I think it was last week, November 16th, by Trey Mundy, who's been doing a lot of the child abuse cases that he's been finding against the Watchtower. And he's the one that exposed the appellate court that said, yes, the Watchtower has to pay that $4,000 a day. And that was back, the original statement was back in March of 2016. So they've accrued over $2 million in fines already. And like you said, they don't think anything of it. But if the average witness, knew that was truly going on, you would hope they would think twice about it. But again, like you said, it's a high control group. It's mind control that they have, that they excuse it. Just like that elder I talked to, he had an excuse why that $4,000 wasn't that big of a deal. Aren't we human? Aren't we imperfect? Always an excuse.
We always find that when we put our videos up and people will comment, and the first thing they'll say is, well, didn't this organization teach you some good things? Or didn't you learn this? They try to throw off the topic of what you're trying to discuss to try to say, oh, you had these other things going on that were positive. And we never said that there were things that the organization did not do for us that was positive.
Right.
But when the organization wants other religions to hold fast to every letter of the law, and once they find out that there's something that they didn't do right, then they're like, oh, they're wrong. But when the society does a couple of things wrong, they try to put that up under the rug.
Right.
That double standard always.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, it's interesting.
You don't do it, but it's okay when I do it.
Yeah, exactly. And unfortunately,
they're pointing the finger at you, and they got four
pointing back at them.
Yeah, right?
Exactly. Well, I think an excellent example of how deteriorated the morals can be is If you look at the current president and how he doesn't speak truth, or he distracts, says something else to distract people from what they're really inquiring about, that's the same with the witnesses. Yes, we may point out a negative and they're saying, but look at all the positive done. It doesn't negate the negative that's going on in that religion, right?
Absolutely, because somebody came on our channel or on our video and they said, yeah, like President Trump said, fake news. I'm like, oh God, but they're trying to accuse us of giving out fake news. But
right.
like we are, like, just like yourself, we're old time.
Yes.
Jehovah's Witnesses. So if we were to go back to the Kingdom Hall, a lot of the things that they taught us, they don't even teach anymore.
That's what I hear. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
So to them, when we come back talking about what we knew, it might sound like fake news to them. But you can't take away what we experienced in our life. And that's the thing that you can't lie about. You can't lie about what you lived.
Right. Exactly. And that's why they don't, I think that's clever of them that all their library is digital now, because they get rid of all the paper evidence that I can remember back in my husband and I always collected old Watchtower publications. We had them back to Russell. Mm-hmm. And boy, then when you started looking at them, when we started really looking into this religion back in the 90s and had the paper evidence, well, now they can change that, because whatever they store digitally, they can change it if they don't want it to say what it used to say.
Yep.
In fact, one of the things that witnesses often tell you when you talk to them is they'll say, go to jw.org. Go to jw.org.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you're talking to a witness, it's always interesting if you tell them, well, I had a chance to go to jw.org, but your stuff is not up there. I was looking for something on the book of Revelation. And I remember years ago, y'all had a book called the Revelation book, and I was trying to find it. I couldn't find it. So what happens if you go to jw.org, it's very interesting, and after a while, it's going to change. We're going to see this change. If you go to jw.org, like they always tell you to go, you'll see all of these links. They're grayed out. In fact, basically, there is nothing really available past the year 2000 on the Watchtower's website.
Isn't that interesting?
So any publication that was written prior to 2000, you pretty much cannot access it on their website, which is really ironic when they're always telling people, go to jw.org, go to jw.org. So you really cannot do any research on their publication.
No.
And it will be a matter of time when people will click on jw.org and those grayed out links will no longer even be there.
That's true.
So here you have a religion that's been around for like 140 years, and you can only go back 20 years. So they
and you know that that they got something to hide, because when you take something like Time magazine, you can go back to the early inception of that magazine. They don't have anything to hide.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, you can go back. When we was in college, we had these databases where you could actually go back to some of the first Washington Post magazines and articles written, because they make it available. And so here you have a religion that will not allow people to access more than 20 years of their published material. Keeping in mind, all of those wonderful jewels were called truths of God.
Right. But, the light's getting brighter.
Yeah.
Bright lights. Yes.
Crazy.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, I feel we can talk about the headquarters, we can talk about those that are responsible, but who I feel sorry for are the meek sheep that are out in the congregation that do not think. They're not taught critical thinking, like your website talks about critical thinking. Had we learned that, we could start dissecting down what is being said and how things were changing.
You know what was interesting was the Russia issue.
Yes.
This was very interesting. And I had this conversation with a number of people, a couple of guys who were former elders. We discussed this. The Russian government accused the Watchtower of being terrorists and causing all kinds of problems in the country. Is it not interesting that they allowed a member of the governing body to get a passport, come into the country, sit in the audience, get up and get back on a plane and go back to the United States? The very person who runs this very organization that you call corrupt. And we was laughing about, can you imagine Pablo Escobar, Escobar down in South America, the big drug kingpin, coming to the United States, going to one of the courthouses because one of his guys on trial, and he getting up and leaving. They wouldn't let him out. So you look at the like you said, the actual Jehovah's Witness. And I was looking when some of the video footage at some of the witnesses in Russia, just some of the older members, they have absolutely nothing to do with the rules, the policies, and yet the very people who make those, their lives are untouched. Untouched.
It's so sad.
It's like when we had a chance to look at the book called Watchtower Slave, 30 Years Watchtower Slave, and the gentleman made the point that the society would often write these articles and books, knowing it would excite the popular, so they would just re-attack Jehovah's Witnesses, and the guys in Bethel just sit there and watch people go to jail and laugh, and for their own purpose. And so when you have people in position who make decisions and other people have to pay the price, it is just so sad. It's just so sad.
Yeah, because the people are innocent, like Joy was saying. It's like, here you are. We used to be those people. We would sit in the Kingdom Hall, and I remember when I was a little kid, I did not want Armageddon to come, because I did not want to go through the Great Tribulation. Yeah. So I was like, oh my God, I wanted it to come because I was being jeered at school and that kind of stuff. But to actually go through that, no.
Yeah. My mom was scared to death because they used to always talk about woe to the pregnant woman, woe to and see, she was pregnant with my baby brother. My baby brother was 40-some years old now. And so people were just scared to death,
We used to laugh at religions that taught hellfire, saying, oh, we're not a fear-based religion. We don't believe in hellfire. But it's a fear-based religion if you don't think you're going to survive Armageddon.
That's true. That is very true.
I always thought a sociologist should look at Jehovah's Witness and see how well the founders integrated a lot of human characteristics, because one, especially with the truth book we used to have back in the 60s and 70s, is one, this, dangle that carrot, here's the paradise. Two, people are not going to like you looking into the truth. I mean, they psychologically had it down pat, how to capture people's minds, how to keep them excited, how to keep them looking forward, how to keep giving them the money, just, plowing through, doing the work, and never fulfilling their lives that they should have fulfilled here.
That would be a fascinating study.
Wouldn't it? In fact, one of my sailing buddies, it was interesting this year when I was down in the Caribbean, we were talking about our histories. He went to Berkeley in the 60s, believe it or not. I was a witness in the 60s. And yet I said something about, well, one of my favorite books when leaving the organization was to read True Believer by Eric Hoffer. He wrote that back in the 50s. He said, I had to read that book in college in Berkeley. He said, I wondered if you ever looked at that to see the characteristics, the same thing that Eric Hoffer said about the true believer. You have that dangling carrot, you have the busy work. People don't have time to think about what they're under mind control.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Even with my life now, I'm so busy. Like, I'm not busy doing Watchtower stuff, of course, but when you got your job, you're trying to do critical thinkers, you got your elderly parents you're trying to take care of, you're trying to have a life, and then you wake up one day and it's like December. In a couple of weeks, it'll be December, right? And I was thinking to myself, wow, time goes by fast. Yeah. I mean, really. And so I often think about how when we get involved with the videos and we're on the internet and stuff, and I look and see, well, I see all the people that's commenting on all these videos. And I'm like, well, I hope they're living their lives too, besides just sitting around watching all these videos. Because when you wake up, your life is gone,
The former life. Right. And we were and aren't you amazed now how much time we devoted to the Watchtower interests? All those meetings, service, studying. We don't even have that time now. But what I think is so sad is all those wasted lives. What could those people have done potentially different instead of devoting it to that organization?
Absolutely. Yeah. Because I think about it, I say, I could have 3 PhDs.
Yeah.
The amount of time that you went to all the meetings.
Exactly.
Do you remember the Awake magazine? I think it was on the Awake magazine. It was on the back cover when they used to have the subscriptions. And they had like a little comment someone had made that, reading the Awake magazine was like getting a 4-year college degree.
Yeah.
And circuit overseers and district overseers, they took that comment, boy, and they just ran with it. They just ran.
They did.
Friends go to college, just read these magazines.
Well, what's interesting, when I did apply to college, and you have to take a test just to get in, and the lady said, wow, you're one of the highest that ever scored on this test. And in my mind, I thought, it's because I read the Awake magazine.
Don't give him all that credit now. Don't give him all that credit.
Well, no, now I know differently. I was just smart.
Too many people are giving credit to Watchtower. Like they'll tell JT, oh, the reason why you do so well on your videos is because you really, you learned this from the Watchtower. And I said, there was a lot of brothers that put me to sleep giving.
No, it's because JT was intelligent and he's using the gifts that he has. It's nothing to do with the Watchtower.
Nothing at all. Right. They only gave you courage to stand in front of somebody.
Yeah. But you would have found that another way, don't you think? Had it not been through the Watchtower.
We had to give him a little bit of credit, right?
Well, I know my sister-in-law says, she goes, because she was Catholic and became a witness. She goes, no one else told me Jehovah's name. And I thought, really? You're going to stick with this organization with all the troubles they're having, all this child abuse, because they taught you God's name?
But now think about it. That's what they actually tell you.
Yeah.
That's part of the indoctrination part. When you start thinking about leaving, what do they tell you? They'll say, where you going? Who taught you this? Who?
Right. I know, and I remember when we were leaving, I used to take that phrase. People say, well, where is she going to go? And I said, no. Jesus said, whom else are we going to go? Or Peter said to Jesus, whom else are we going to go away to? Do they really look at Jesus as the one that's supposed to be the answer to these? No. So see how they even twist the basics.
Twist everything.
Twist everything to their benefit. Everything.
It's really amazing.
That's for sure.
It's really nice to have the freedom to actually look back now and be able to ask questions that you could not do years ago.
Right.
Right. Well, just like that elder that I ran into, they always want to, their witnesses are so judgmental. Because, after we had our conversation, he looked at me and he says, well, are you still reading the Bible? Now I've got a different answer I would say to him, but it's like, I said, yes. And it's amazing to read it without blinders on. So I'm hoping he'll think about that. What does she mean by what blinders do I have on?
Right. That is so amazing.
It's none of his business if I read the Bible or not, but I figure I'm not going to let him judge me, and I'm going to try to say something to make him think.
That's what happened.
Yeah.
It's a good feeling, though. It's a good feeling knowing that you don't have to look at something and say, I can't read that because it's not a Watchtower publication.
Yeah.
Right.
That's what I like about it. And you can stretch your mind. You can even just, anything you want to think. If JT wants to think what he wants to think, I don't have to worry about him pushing bringing my mind back in line with his thinking.
Exactly.
They call it adjusting your thinking.
Exactly.
Right. But people under mind control don't understand that. And that's why a lot of witnesses, when they leave, and someone told me it would take 2 years to adjust. It's the mental adjusting that I have to think on my own. Yeah. I have to trust my own thoughts. Yes, that's how we're supposed to be.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. It is amazing. I don't know, did you ever get a chance to read a book that was released, I think last year, called The ExJW Cult, Trying to Reach Out to Witnesses? This was a woman who special pioneered up in Canada, left in the 80s, and kept asking herself, why? Why did I get trapped in this? Why did I do this? And she became a psychologist. Okay. And it's very interesting. Again, even though I'd been out for 15 years, I was stumbled by the thought cult. So that's why, if she hadn't used cult in the title, it'd probably reach more witnesses. It appeals to the ExJW group. But it doesn't appeal. Yeah, right. But she has some very interesting comments. I really recommend getting her book and reading it if no one, especially because we have to unprogram so much.
Absolutely.
Now give me the name of the book again.
ExJW Cult. Hold on, let me see if I can find it real quick.
Okay.
Because it was excellent. It just came out recently. I got to find it. It's in my Kindle.
Okay.
Yeah, she left about the same time Ray and Cynthia and, those up at Bethel that left in 1980, called Exiting the JW Cult.
Okay.
I was going to get her name. Oh, Bonnie Ziman, Zieman. Bonnie Ziman. Exiting the JW Cult, Healing Handbook for Former Jehovah's Witnesses.
Okay, I'll check that out. Maybe I'll put a link.
Yeah. I had done a lot. My husband and I had done a lot in 2000. We reacquainted ourselves with Ray and Cynthia. They lived in Atlanta. We lived in Atlanta at the time because I thought that book was so instrumental in opening my mind.
Yeah.
So who knows, maybe someday it will be available somehow, somewhere, so that other people can see how the minds of the governing body think.
Oh my goodness.
And how that's just basically people control or mind control.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That was a very good book, especially for myself. I knew so many people he spoke about in the book.
Yes.
And he was like, oh my goodness. That's all you can say.
Yeah. Well, to me, it was interesting to watch, to see that program this month. I guess whatever they put out, a monthly program out of JW Broadcast. Gary Bro and his wife Ruby, my husband and I were in the St. Louis area in the 70s, all pioneering. They went to the circuit work. My husband and I went to Bethel. And I look at him now and I cringe and think, how can he defend that, that organization? Why didn't he see, especially when you're in the middle of the thick of it?
In the middle of it. Yeah.
Why don't you see what's going on? So it makes me sick to see that he's so loyal and now a spokesperson.
People have so much invested, though.
Yes.
It reminds you of when Bernie Madoff came out. There were people who just couldn't believe, no, it can't be, because they're like, I got everything, I got invested in that thing. And so the same thing for witness. For a witness, and I tell people all the time who leave, you really have to understand when we talk to people, we're telling people, do you realize that you just wasted your entire, that's a hard pill. That's a hard pill.
That's like, they can't do that. They cannot, you can't mentally go there.
Oh, you can't go there. You're right. You mentally can't go there.
But what we've noticed is that a lot of our friends that we knew years ago, they're now all going into the circuit work. Yeah. A lot of my old roommates and stuff like that, they're like in the circuit work now.
A lot of people know.
So they're big time in it in the organization,
And yet, they have to know that this is an empty organization. There's nothing really to offer. So they have a little status. That's nothing. You've been to college. You know what it really means to gain knowledge and to be an expert in your field. They are nothing. They have nothing to really offer the general population.
So they're part of the machine.
Yes. The machine that criminally is a criminal, is bullying, have bullying tendencies, are hiding criminal facts. I mean, when you really look at it, it's really sad.
It's very bad.
It's pretty bad.
But I thought that eventually somebody that we knew would get out, but we have yet with our videos. I think there was a brother in his congregation from North Carolina, and he said, "Oh, I think I know that brother." He sent us an email, and he goes, "Oh, I think I know you." And then his wife said, "Yeah," and then she told him who we were, and then we called him on the phone, and they just laughed. But I mean, we have not found that many people at all. Maybe 2 or 3.
Isn't that a shame? And that's what's sad. They have really got the ticket down on how to keep their mind
on lockdowns.
Yes.
Absolutely lockdowns.
They do.
But you know what? You have to feel good. You are planting little seeds. Yeah. Who knows? Who knows what, the next person that may wake up from it. You never know.
You never know.
Yeah. And that's really the whole reason, someone help you get out, someone help you see it. The least you can do is turn back and try to help a couple of people.
Right. I used to call it a helping hand. You know how you climb up a mountain or climb up out of a ditch, you turn around and help the next one lower than you to come out.
And that's why conversations like this we feel are so great, because if somebody comes past this video on YouTube, then at least they can see, oh, we're civil, we're not crazy, we're not out selling drugs, we're not out doing all these bad things, but we're trying to help people.
Right. Because I think witnesses, and especially ex-witnesses on a whole, are moral people. The only thing, one person made a comment the other day that I read, and I thought this is interesting, is that yes, the ex-JW community can think, we're all independent thinkers, but you have to watch out. In that ex-JW community may be some of those pedophiles they used to hide. So you've got to learn critical thinking and your social skills now. You can't rely on just because they were a brother or a sister that they're good people.
That's true.
In Ray Franz's book, he put it best, I think. He said, for the first time in my life, basically, I can judge and deal with a person as an individual.
Yeah.
Look at it through the prism of, well, he's a brother, he's a circular sister, so he must be trustworthy. Oh, he's a missionary. Oh, he's definitely trustworthy. Oh, this is a low-hour publisher. I wouldn't trust him with the dog, you know. So he said he don't have to do that anymore. And that's really what we have now seen, how you have to judge an individual that you meet as an individual.
That's right.
And that blanket, that broad brush stuff, that doesn't work. It just
doesn't work at all.
Yeah, that's so true.
I think we're coming up on our 40 minutes.
All right.
Oh, my goodness. Okay. Well, this was fantastic. All right. Well, thank you so much for inviting me on these talks. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Yes. Thanks a lot, Joy.
Okay.
See ya.
Take care.
All right. See ya.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
This program was sponsored by Critical Thinkers.